Welcome to a world where stories hidden in the shadows of everyday life are unveiled tales of chilling secrets and the most haunting moments of the human condition. If you're ready to join me in descending into the eerie depths of the human soul and uncovering events that once shook an entire nation, don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss a single story. Today, we are not merely telling a story. We are peeling back the layers of a nightmare that haunted America, killer who turned peace into terror and left behind scars that will never heal. Let us now step into Echoes of a Killer, the Willow Creek Files. The idyllic town of Willow Creek, nestled deep within the verdant heart of Oregon, had always prided itself on its tranquility. Its main street, lined with quaint brick buildings housing bustling bakeries and independent bookstores, was a postcard come to life. Children rode bikes down oak-shaded lanes, neighbors exchanged pleasantries over picket fences, and the distant hum of the lumber mill was the only reminder of the world beyond its peaceful borders. It was the kind of place where people moved to escape the chaos of big cities, a haven where doors were left unlocked and trust was an unspoken currency. This serene facade, however, was brutally shattered on a crisp autumn morning, a day that would forever be etched into the town's collective memory as the day the silence screamed. Detective Eleanor Vance, a woman whose sharp, intelligent eyes had seen more than their fair share of human depravity in her 20 years on the force, was the first on the scene. The call had come in at 6:17 a.m., a welfare check requested by a concerned niece who hadn't heard from her elderly aunt and uncle, Martha and George Miller, for over 2 days. As Vance's cruiser turned onto Elm Street, the first tendrils of dawn painted the sky in muted shades of gray and pink, a stark contrast to the grim tableau that awaited her. The Miller residence, a charming 2-story Victorian with a meticulously kept rose garden, stood eerily silent. The morning paper lay uncollected on the porch, its plastic wrapper still intact. A single vibrant red rose, heavy with dew, drooped beside the front door, a poignant splash of life against the encroaching dread. Vance ascended the porch steps, her hand instinctively resting on the grip of her service weapon. The front door was unlocked, a detail that sent a cold prickle down her spine. In Willow Creek, that was normal. Now, it felt like an invitation to a nightmare. Inside, the house was immaculate, almost disturbingly so. No signs of forced entry, no struggle, no overturned furniture. The air hung heavy with the scent of potpourri and something else. Something metallic and cloying, like old pennies and decay. Vance moved through the living room, her boots silent on the plush carpet. A half-finished crossword puzzle lay on the coffee table. A cup of tea, now cold, beside it. It spoke of lives interrupted, not ended violently. She found them in the master bedroom, lying peacefully in their bed, as if in a deep, undisturbed slumber. George, a retired carpenter known for his booming laugh, lay on his back. Martha, always the gentler soul, curled slightly towards him. Their faces were serene, their eyes closed. If not for the faint purplish discoloration of their skin, the absolute stillness, and the chilling cold emanating from their forms, one might have believed they were merely sleeping. But Vance knew better. This was not a natural death. There was no blood, no obvious wounds. The cause of death would later be determined as suffocation, a method both intimate and insidious. It suggested a killer who wanted to exert ultimate control, to steal life without the mess, without the overt violence that might alert neighbors. It was a death designed to be discovered later, to prolong the agony of realization. "Chief, you need to see this." Vance's voice, usually steady and commanding, was barely a whisper as she radioed for backup. "It's the Millers. They're gone. And there's something about it. Too quiet." Within minutes, the sleepy Elm Street was transformed into a buzzing hive of forensic activity. Uniformed officers cordoned off the area, crime scene photographers meticulously documented every angle, and the solemn faces of paramedics confirmed what Vance already knew. Chief Miller, a burly man whose usually jovial demeanor had been replaced by a grim resolve, stood beside Vance, his gaze sweeping over the scene. "No forced entry, Ellie?" he asked, his voice low. Vance shook her head. Door was unlocked. No signs of struggle. Clinical, somehow. like they were never even awake. The news ripped through Willow Creek like wildfire. The Millers, pillars of the community, gone? And not from old age, but from something unthinkable? Disbelief quickly curdled into a chilling apprehension. Whispers replaced friendly greetings. Doors that had always been open now remained firmly shut, curtains drawn. The unspoken trust that bound the town together began to fray. For the next 2 weeks, the police force, aided by state investigators, worked tirelessly. Every neighbor was interviewed, every possible lead pursued. Yet they found nothing. No fingerprints that didn't belong, no DNA trace, no witnesses. It was as if a ghost had walked into the Miller home, committed an unspeakable act, and then vanished into thin air. The killer had left no signature, no motive, just 2 peaceful bodies and a town teetering on the edge of panic. The media, initially respectful, began to circle. Local news anchors spoke in hushed tones. Then national outlets picked up the story, the Willow Creek mystery. Elderly couple vanishes in their sleep. The town's idyllic image was being slowly, painfully rewritten. Then, 2 weeks and 3 days after the discovery of the Millers, the silence screamed again. This time, the victim was Sarah Chun, a vibrant 24-year-old barista at the Daily Grind coffee shop, a familiar face to every early riser in Willow Creek. Sarah lived alone in a small apartment above her parents' Chinese restaurant on Main Street. Her parents, concerned when she didn't show up for her morning shift, found her. Unlike the Millers, Sarah was not found in her bed. She was discovered slumped over her kitchen table, a half-eaten bowl of cereal still before her, a novel open beside it. Again, no signs of forced entry, no struggle. But this time there was a subtle difference. A single polished river stone, smooth and gray, rested precisely in the center of her closed book, holding her place. When Vance arrived, the scene was already bustling. Ben Carter, a younger detective with a sharp mind for forensics, met her at the door. Same MO, detective. No forced entry, no struggle. Suffocation suspected. But this, he gestured towards the table. Vance's eyes immediately fixed on the river stone. It wasn't just a random object. It was placed with deliberate care. She picked it up, feeling its cool, smooth weight. It was too perfect, too out of place. This wasn't just murder anymore. This was a statement. "This is new," Vance murmured, turning the stone over in her gloved hand. A calling card. The discovery of Sarah Chun ignited a fresh wave of terror, far more potent than the first. The Millers had been elderly, a tragic, isolated incident in some people's minds. But Sarah, young, vibrant, a part of the town's daily rhythm. No one was safe. Curfews were voluntarily imposed. Streetlights seemed dimmer, shadows longer. Parents clutched their children closer, their eyes scanning every corner. The once charming Main Street became a ghost town after dark. Vance stood in Sarah Chen's apartment, the heavy air thick with the scent of fear and something disturbingly methodical. The killer wasn't just taking lives. They were systematically dismantling the town's sense of security, piece by terrifying piece. She looked at the polished river stone in her hand, then out the window at the now deserted Main Street. The silence of Willow Creek had become a palpable, suffocating presence, a constant reminder that somewhere, unseen, a predator was moving, watching, waiting for its next moment to scream. And they had no idea who it was or why. The polished river stone, smooth and gray, became the grim icon of Willow Creek's burgeoning nightmare. After Sarah Chun, 3 more victims followed in quick succession over the next 5 weeks, each discovery ratcheting up the collective terror to unbearable levels. There was Thomas "Tommy" Jefferson, a beloved high school football coach found in his small cottage on the outskirts of town. Then Emily Hayes, a young single mother and waitress, discovered in her rented duplex. And finally, Michael Thorne, a reclusive but well-liked artist, whose vibrant studio was transformed into a chamber of dread. Each time, the scene was eerily similar. No forced entry, no struggle, the victim subtly suffocated. And each time, a single, perfectly smooth river stone, identical to the one found with Sarah Chun, was left at the crime scene, placed with chilling precision sometimes on a bedside table, sometimes on a book, once even carefully nestled in the pocket of a coat hanging in a closet. The killer was methodical, meticulous, and seemingly uncatchable. The local police force, overwhelmed and under-resourced, was quickly joined by a state task force, then the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. Special Agent Dr. Eris Thorne, a renowned criminal profiler with an unsettling ability to delve into the darkest corners of the human psyche, was assigned to the case. Thorne was a quiet man, his presence understated, yet his words carried the weight of profound understanding. "This isn't about rage, Detective Vance," Thorne stated during a tense briefing in the makeshift incident room, a repurposed community center. He pointed at a whiteboard covered with victim photos, crime scene diagrams, and red strings connecting dates and locations. "There's no overkill, no overt violence. This killer isn't angry at his victims. He's engaged in a performance. The suffocation, the lack of struggle. It speaks to a desire for ultimate control, to assert dominance without the messy catharsis of violence." Vance, her eyes shadowed from sleepless nights, nodded slowly. "And the stones? The signature?" Thorne replied, his voice calm, yet resonating with an undercurrent of disquiet. "It's his personal touch, his way of saying, 'I was here. I did this.' It's also a taunt. He wants us to know he's leaving a calling card, but he's chosen something so ubiquitous, so natural, that it's almost impossible to trace." The profiler's words offered little comfort, but they did provide a chilling clarity. The killer, dubbed the Wraith of Willow Creek by the national media, wasn't just a monster. He was an artist of dread, a puppet master pulling the strings of an entire town. The impact on Willow Creek was devastating. The once bustling streets were now desolate after dusk. Businesses suffered, their doors closing earlier and earlier. Children, once free to roam, were now chaperoned everywhere, their laughter muted by the pervasive fear. Suspicion festered, turning neighbor against neighbor. Every stranger was a potential killer, every quiet person a suspect. The town's economic fabric began to unravel, tourism drying up, prospective new residents staying far away. The vibrant red roses in the town gardens seemed to wilt, reflecting the life draining from the community. Detective Vance carried the weight of it all on her shoulders. She ate, slept, and breathed the case. Her apartment was a chaotic mess of case files, maps, and discarded coffee cups. Her husband, a patient man, barely saw her. Her dreams were filled with the serene, vacant faces of the victims and the chilling smoothness of the river stones. She felt the eyes of the town on her, pleading for answers, demanding an end to the nightmare. Ben Carter, Vance's younger, tech-savvy partner, worked tirelessly, sifting through digital footprints, security camera footage, and phone records, but the Wraith was a ghost in the machine as well. "He's too careful, Ellie," Carter mumbled one late night, rubbing his tired eyes. "No social media presence, no credit card trails, no discernible pattern in his movements. It's like he doesn't exist until he chooses to." The lack of a discernible victim pattern was particularly perplexing. The Millers were elderly. Sarah Chen was young. Tommy Jefferson, middle-aged. Emily Hayes, a single mother. Michael Thorne, an artist. They came from all walks of life, different ages, different social circles. There was no obvious common thread that tied them together, making it impossible to predict the next strike. This randomness, Thorne explained, was itself a pattern, a deliberate act to maximize fear and confuse investigators. The killer wanted to maintain control, not be boxed in by expectations. He's choosing his victims not for who they are, but for what their deaths represent to the community, Thorne theorized. The Millers, the bedrock. Sarah, the youth. Tommy, the community leader. Emily, the vulnerable. Michael, the creative spirit. He's chipping away at the very essence of Willow Creek. One evening, a glimmer of a lead emerged, almost by accident. While reviewing the vast amount of surveillance footage from local businesses near Emily Hayes' duplex, Carter noticed a faint, almost imperceptible smudge on the lens of a convenience store camera. blurring a specific corner of the frame. It was near a small, overgrown path that led to the Willow Creek River, a popular spot for fishing and hiking. This blur, Ellie, Carter pointed to a pixelated anomaly on the screen. It's only there on the days the killer strikes, and only on cameras facing this direction. It was a long shot, but it was something. Vance, Thorne, and Carter spent hours digitally enhancing the blurry images, trying to correct for the lens imperfection. It was agonizingly slow work, like trying to see through a pane of frosted glass. But then, on the footage from the night Emily Hayes died, a figure materialized from the static, tall, slender, indistinct, but definitely there, moving with an almost unnatural fluidity towards the river path. And in his hand, something reflective, something smooth. The stones? Vance breathed, her heart pounding. He's getting them from the river. The next day, a team of officers, including Vance and Carter, meticulously combed the banks of the Willow Creek River, upstream and downstream from the path. It was a painstaking search, filtering through countless natural stones. They were looking for something specific, a cluster of unusually smooth, uniformly gray stones, perhaps indicating a preferred collection spot, or even a hidden cache. Hours turned into an entire day. Discouragement began to set in. The river was full of stones. Just as the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples, Ben Carter let out a shout. "Ellie, over here!" He was standing beside a shallow eddy, partially hidden by weeping willows. The riverbank here was different. Instead of the usual rough pebbles, there was a small, almost perfectly circular patch of fine, gray sand. And embedded within it, nestled among the roots of an old willow tree, was a small, almost perfectly round hollow. Around it, the ground was disturbed, as if someone had been repeatedly sifting through the sand. And at the bottom of the hollow, glinting faintly in the fading light, was a small, unmistakable pile of the exact kind of river stones they had been looking for, smooth, polished, almost identical in size and shape to the ones left at the crime scenes. It was a chilling discovery. Not just that he collected them from the river, but that he had a personal, hidden sanctuary where he carefully selected his morbid tokens. This wasn't a random act. This was ritual. This was planning. This was an intimate connection to the very earth of Willow Creek. Vance knelt beside the hollow, her fingers brushing against the cold, smooth stones. A shiver ran down her spine. The wraith wasn't just lurking in the shadows. He was a part of the very landscape, watching them, perhaps even laughing. They had a location, a starting point, but they still didn't have a name. The shadow of the wraith had lengthened, becoming almost impossibly vast. But now, finally, a single, flickering flame of hope had been ignited in the heart of Willow Creek's despair. The hunt truly had begun. The discovery of the killer's stone cache by the riverbank marked a critical turning point in the Willow Creek case. It provided the task force with the first tangible lead beyond the abstract psychological profile. Special Agent Thorne immediately refocused the investigation. "This spot, Detective Vance," he explained, gesturing at the crime scene photos of the riverbank. "This is his sanctuary, his ritual space. He isn't just picking up stones. He's selecting them, polishing them, imbuing them with meaning. This suggests a profound, almost spiritual connection to the place, and a deep-seated need for control and perfection." The theory was that the killer lived or worked in close proximity to this specific stretch of the river, perhaps visiting it frequently. They initiated a meticulous canvass of every residence, every business, and every individual who had regular access to the Willow Creek River within a 5-mile radius of the cache site. It was a daunting task involving thousands of interviews and background checks, but for the first time they had a geographic constraint. Ben Carter, ever the digital wizard, cross-referenced this geographical data with other seemingly innocuous details gleaned from the crime scenes. While the killer left no discernible DNA, the forensic team had managed to lift microscopic trace evidence from Emily Hayes' kitchen floor, an unusual blend of organic material, including a specific type of pollen common to the river reeds, mixed with a fine dust that suggested woodworking or sculpture. It was a needle in a haystack, but Carter had a hunch. The river reeds, the woodworking dust, and the stones, Carter mused during a late-night session, pacing around the incident room. What if he's not just collecting stones from the river, but processing them, polishing them, shaping them? And the dust. Maybe he's not a woodworker, but an artist who uses river materials, or someone who maintains the riverbanks, like a park ranger or a landscaper. This new line of reasoning led Vance and Carter to revisit the local library, a charming old building near the river. The librarian, Arthur Finch, was a quiet, unassuming man in his late 40s. He was known for his vast knowledge of local history, particularly the natural history of the Willow Creek River, and for his hobby of collecting and polishing river stones, which he occasionally displayed in the library's local history section. He even had a small, meticulous workshop in his backyard, where he crafted intricate dioramas of local flora and fauna, often incorporating polished river stones and dried reeds. Arthur Finch had been interviewed during the initial round of questioning. He was polite, articulate, and seemed genuinely distressed by the murders. He had an alibi for each of the killings either at the library or at home working on his dioramas, often alone. His lack of social presence, his quiet demeanor, and his seemingly mundane life had allowed him to blend into the background, precisely the profile Thorne had suggested for the Wraith. Someone overlooked, someone who felt invisible. Now, however, his passion for river stones, his proximity to the cache, and the peculiar dust found at Emily Hayes' apartment took on a sinister new light. The trace evidence had been a red herring, not woodworking dust, but fine particulate from the stone polishing process, mixed with riverbed sediment and pollen from reeds. It had been inadvertently carried from his workshop, or perhaps even on his clothes, into the victim's home. Vance decided on a pretext visit. She went to the library, feigning interest in local history books, engaging Finch in conversation about the town's origins. He spoke eloquently, his hands, pale and surprisingly strong, gesturing with quiet enthusiasm. She noticed his nails were meticulously clean, but beneath one, a faint residue, almost imperceptible, caught her eye. It looked like the grayish dust from the riverbed. As Finch turned to retrieve a book, Vance subtly placed a small, almost identical river stone, one they had retrieved from the cache, on the counter. She watched his reaction carefully. His eyes, usually placid behind his spectacles, flickered, a flicker of something she couldn't quite place: recognition, curiosity, or something deeper, more unsettling. He picked it up, his thumb tracing its smooth surface. "Ah, a beautiful specimen," he said, his voice even. "From the upper willow, by the feel of it. They have a distinct smoothness there." His knowledge was too precise, his interest too intense. Vance knew. She felt it in her bones. A warrant was quickly secured, based on the accumulated circumstantial evidence and Dr. Thorne's profiling. The raid on Arthur Finch's unassuming bungalow was executed with precision and speed. Finch offered no resistance, his face a mask of detached calm, almost as if he had been expecting them. His small workshop in the backyard was the key. It was a meticulously organized space, filled with tools for polishing stones, tiny brushes, and vials of sealant. On a workbench, a half-finished diorama depicted a miniature Willow Creek, complete with tiny, perfectly placed river stones. And hidden beneath a loose floorboard, they found his macabre collection. A small wooden box, lined with velvet, containing 6 perfectly polished river stones, each labeled with a small, handwritten tag. The names of the victims: Martha Miller, George Miller, Sarah Chin, Thomas Jefferson, Emily Hayes, Michael Thorne. It was his trophy case, his chilling ledger. Arthur Finch was taken into custody. During interrogation, he remained eerily calm, speaking in a soft, measured tone. He didn't confess in the traditional sense, but he didn't deny. He spoke of feeling invisible his entire life, of being a ghost in his own town. He talked about the art of making someone seen, even if it was through their absence. The suffocation, he explained, was an act of pure control, a way to take a life without the victim ever knowing, or struggling, or resisting. It was a profound intimacy, a moment where he was the only one truly present. And the stones? They were his signature, his way of marking his presence, his gifts to the town, ensuring that his existence and his power would finally be acknowledged. He chose his victims, he calmly explained, not for any personal vendetta, but for their symbolic representation within Willow Creek. They were vital threads in the town's tapestry, and by removing them, he was unraveling the very fabric of the community, forcing them to see the emptiness he had always felt. The trial of Arthur Finch was a national sensation. Willow Creek was thrust into the spotlight, its quiet charm replaced by the grim notoriety of a serial killer's hunting ground. Finch, dubbed the Architect of Silence by the media, was eventually convicted on all counts, his chilling composure throughout the proceedings only adding to the terror. He was sentenced to life without parole, his quiet smile in the courtroom a final, unnerving testament to his profound detachment. In the aftermath, Willow Creek slowly began to heal, but it would never be the same. The unlocked doors remained locked. The carefree laughter of children now carried a cautious undertone. The once trusting gaze of neighbors was forever tinged with suspicion. The townspeople understood that evil wasn't a monstrous presence that announced itself. It could wear the unassuming face of a librarian, a quiet man who walked among them, invisible, until he chose to be seen through the most horrifying acts imaginable. Detective Eleanor Vance, hailed as a hero, eventually retired from the force, the weight of the Willow Creek case leaving an indelible mark on her soul. She often visited the Willow Creek River, watching the water flow, her eyes scanning for smooth, gray stones. She knew that the true silence was not the absence of sound, but the void left by unchecked darkness, a void that could swallow an entire town whole. The echoes of the wraith of Willow Creek would forever reverberate through the quiet, wounded heart of the town. A chilling reminder that even in the most idyllic places, shadows lurk, waiting for their moment to scream.